So let's get ethics properly defined before we go any further. Ethics is a discipline of good and bad moral duty, moral behavior, moral obligations. Ethics is also principles of conduct by an individual and or by a group. As far as the definition of moral, which is interesting, it's expressing, teaching, conforming to concepts, standards such as right and wrong behavior. And part of the reason I picked C12 was the fact that I really didn't want to get into right and wrong behavior in 2020 because of what's going on in our parts of our society. There are groups that are just misbehaving, in my opinion. And so obviously sanctioning of one's conscience to ethical behavior is part of how ethics is properly defined. And there are parts of our society currently who have not sanctioned themselves for conscience of ethical behavior. But anyway, we need to talk about ag consultants and what's appropriate for us. So the model is accepted as a basis for comparison between right and wrong. So let's just take a couple of examples from the ethics checklist. Rotary International, they have a four-way test. One, is it truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? It's kind of a soft one, but a good one to look at. Consultants or managers may have a little different checklist, like is it legal? Obviously upfront. Is it balanced? That's always good if it is balanced. And how do I feel about myself and about my organization when I behave in this manner? And we probably should get up front the two primary reasons why people act unethically. And obviously the number one would be the ethics standards that the person has is different for those of society as a whole. And again, we have people currently in society who is clearly has ethics standards different from those of society when they find it okay to burn up parts of cities and businesses, etc. And then, of course, they can choose to act selfishly, just simply act selfishly. So a couple of examples of the selfish modes. The obvious ones is that the briefcase left at the airport with some important documents and $1,000. And so what options do you and I have when we walk into find that toss that briefcase in a corner? We can toss the briefcase, keep the money, and tell our friends how lucky we were. Or we can take the cash, turn in the briefcase for people who need the important documents, and otherwise keep it a secret. So which one is more honest than the other? I'll let you think about that. The example is farmer witnessing 3 urbanites placing a white bag under a rock at the base of a tree on his farm. And so the first question would be, what would you do if you were the farmer? And the second question that was asked, what would an ethical person do? Almost as if the farmer would not be ethical. I'm kidding. So the comment is that the farmer does do what seems to be the right thing to do. He calls for law enforcement for a site visit, and they find a bag with $50,000 in cash. So now that we had that background information, how do you feel? Anyway, those are just a couple of thoughts from the notes on selfish modes and how we would behave in those cases. A couple of other comments on the selfish modes. The first one would be something like, no one will know. I can do this. There's a slim chance anyone will find out. It doesn't make any difference anyway. I'll build a client for a few extra hours, so what? He gains the most, etc. So rationalization. I guess that's what it comes out to. I can rationalize almost anything. I'm sure it's legal. Tongue in cheek, the writer of this module found that to be a particularly effective approach, as it really puts your mind at ease, because you can add some legal things, so you can see through an ethical lens. Close one eye and look through the other and try to make it look semi-ethical. And of course, the third one would be, everybody's doing it anyway. That is a peach of an approach. I mean, nobody's totally honest on taxes, so why should I be? That kind of thinking. And you can't compete this way, so you need to find some other way that will make it work. Maybe see what your congressman does. It's probably illegal anyway. So those are just some thoughts on selfish modes that we need to guard against as we go forward, looking at the ASAC Codes of Ethics. An additional comment on selfish mode by Jim Knopfsinger, who wrote this module. He was impressed by the Caterpillar company as an ethical company. And in the introductory note for their Code of Ethics, here's a reference. It says, we believe that the worldwide reach and complexity of our business, and in fact, that ethical conduct is always subject to precise definition, argue strongly for development of such standards. To that extent, our action match the highest standards. It should be a source of pride. It could be a source of pride. On the other hand, let's be careful we do not stay up on that high horse of the pride very long, because we know the pride comes before the fall. To the extent that those actions do not totally match up to the high standards, this code should be a challenge to each of us. So those were the comments that Knopfsinger thought was interesting, that as ethically as that company was, that they still would have to make those comments, modified comments on how people were perceiving, acting, and living with the company's Code of Ethics.